2024's latest horror thriller Abigail shocks audiences. This film not only features a star-studded cast but also a plot full of twists and turns that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Vampire enthusiasts, this is one you can't afford to miss. Without further ado, the film begins. The story starts with a meticulously planned kidnapping. A girl named Abigail is rumored to be the daughter of a super-rich tycoon. One day, after her usual ballet practice, she was preparing to go home, unaware that a group of criminals had already set their sights on her. It turns out someone had secretly plotted to kidnap Abigail without leaving any traces and then extort $50 million from her father. Thus, this person gathered a group of robbers, ready to strike at any moment. These individuals didn't know each other and came from all around the world. They started working together, tracking and investigating Abigail's daily routine, until this day, when everything seemed safe. They boldly broke into Abigail's bedroom, drugged her, and took her away. Unexpectedly, things went surprisingly smoothly. They managed to kidnap Abigail without alerting any of her bodyguards. Following their plan, they took Abigail to a secluded manor in the countryside. A man named Lambert was already waiting for them. He was the mastermind behind the plan. Lambert had them place Abigail in a room and handcuffed her. Then Lambert warned everyone that they only needed to guard Abigail for 24 hours. He would demand a $50 million ransom from Abigail's wealthy father. Once the money was in hand, they would split it and leave the place. Of course, to ensure nothing went wrong and to prevent being tracked, Lambert confiscated everyone's phones. No one objected. After all, they weren't professional robbers, just a group of amateurs temporarily banded together out of financial desperation. They didn't even know Abigail's background when they kidnapped her, but as long as they could get the huge reward, they would do whatever Lambert said. After arranging everything, Lambert prepared to leave temporarily, but before he left, he said something intriguing.
Be in 24 hours, my lovely pack of rats.
In the following hours, everyone stayed in one room with nothing to do, feeling quite bored. Because the team was temporarily assembled, they didn't know each other's true identities, so they made awkward small talk to pass the time. Soon after, a woman named Joey walked into Abigail's room. She was responsible for checking Abigail's physical condition, but at this time, Abigail had already woken up, perhaps realizing she had been kidnapped. She appeared very frightened. Abigail kept begging Joey, who had just entered, to let her go. Since Joey had a son about Abigail's age, she momentarily softened and removed Abigail's blindfold. Joey warned Abigail that there was no need to be afraid. They were only after money, not interested in killing anyone. As long as Abigail cooperated, they would release her the next day once they got the money. Abigail, terrified, asked Joey if she could guarantee that no one would harm her. Joey extended her pinky finger and said,
"I pinky promise you that I'm not gonna let anyone hurt you."
After comforting Abigail, Joey prepared to leave, but Abigail suddenly called out to her.
Joey,
Yeah.
I'm sorry about what's gonna happen to you.
Time unknowingly crept into the early hours of the morning. Unable to sleep, the robber Dean went to the kitchen to find something to eat. But just as he opened the refrigerator, the glass door behind him eerily swung open. Dean thought a companion was playing a prank on him, so he slowly walked in. But once inside, he didn't see anyone. Feeling that something was wrong, Dean turned around and prepared to leave. But in the next moment, his feet were suddenly grabbed by a mysterious force. With a terrified scream, Dean was dragged into the darkness. Dean's screams caught the attention of Sammy, who was nearby. Following the sound, Sammy arrived at the kitchen, but found no one. Curious, Sammy stepped through the glass door and entered the basement. The eerie atmosphere in the basement made her very uncomfortable, so Sammy quickly turned to leave. But just as she reached the door, Sammy sensed something and turned her head. Fortunately, nothing dangerous appeared, but as she walked to the kitchen, she was startled by the sudden appearance of Dean. Angry and thinking Dean was playing a prank, she stepped forward to confront him, but unexpectedly, Dean's head suddenly fell into her hands. Soon, everyone gathered in the kitchen to discuss how Dean had been decapitated. Some suspected that Abigail's family had hired an assassin. Others suspected that Lambert had betrayed them, planning to keep the ransom for himself. Either way, it was clear the place had become extremely dangerous. Rickles immediately suggested that he wanted to leave. Compared to the huge ransom, he valued his life more. Rickles decided to leave immediately. The others tried to persuade him to stay, but as Rickles prepared to open the front door, he discovered that it had somehow been tightly sealed from the outside. At the same time, a strange scene unfolded as the door opened. The sudden occurrence threw everyone into a panic. An enraged Rickles grabbed a chair and smashed it against the door, but it was useless. Joey murmured that this might be a trap. Hearing this, Rickles rushed upstairs without a word and discovered that the rifles in the room had vanished. Frank also told Joey that Lambert might have set them up as scapegoats, so Joey decided to communicate with Abigail again. However, when Joey reached the second floor, she found Rickles standing strangely still not far away. Joey called out softly, but Rickles didn't respond. Joey slowly walked over to check on him. As she got closer, she discovered that half of Rickles' face was smashed in and his neck was torn open. Rickles' death threw everyone into greater chaos, even suspecting each other of secretly helping Lambert eliminate them. Peter wanted to kill Abigail and be done with it, but Joey stopped him. As the group descended into chaos, Sammy suddenly saw a bizarre scene. Abigail, who had been terrified moments before, suddenly calmed down and then forcefully broke free from her handcuffs. This sudden turn of events left everyone in shock. Seeing that Peter was about to be bitten, Frank quickly fired his gun at Abigail. Rescuing Peter, Joey's worldview was completely overturned by everything she witnessed. But before they could comprehend what was happening, the shot Abigail suddenly sat up, and the wound on her head healed at an alarming speed. Seeing Abigail roaring towards them again, Joey didn't hold back this time. However, bullets had no effect on Abigail. It was then that everyone realized that they had kidnapped a very scary person. Now, with the entire house sealed shut, escaping seemed nearly impossible. Luckily, most of them had seen enough vampire movies to know that certain items could be used against them, items like garlic or crosses. So, in a bid for survival, they gathered these items and prepared to take the offensive. When they entered the room, they found vampire Abigail dancing ballet with a corpse. Seeing this, Sammy was furious and charged forward with garlic in hand. This act infuriated Abigail, but when Abigail pounced on Sammy, the garlic turned out to be a joke. Seeing Sammy about to be killed, Peter and Frank also rushed in. With just one punch, Frank was incapacitated. Luckily, Peter still had some fight left, but to their surprise, Peter didn't last 2 seconds before Abigail pinned him to the ground. Then Abigail grabbed the cross from Peter's neck and furiously stabbed him with it. Thus, their first attack ended in complete failure. Vampire Abigail didn't kill them, seeming to prefer torturing them slowly as prey. Back in the hall, unable to find an escape route, Joey administered basic first aid and proposed another plan. The sedative they used to kidnap Abigail had been very effective, and it so happened she had one dose left, so they decided to use the sedative to incapacitate the vampire first, then figure out a way to lock her up. After a short rest, they prepared for another attack. Strangely, this time Abigail had disappeared. Joey instructed everyone to split up and search for Abigail. Once they found her, they were to call out loudly, and she would come immediately. But after searching everywhere, they couldn't find any trace of Abigail. Sammy inadvertently walked into a dilapidated house. As she cautiously explored, a sudden flock of bats startled her, causing her to stumble and fall into a pool behind her. Struggling to get up, Sammy was horrified to find the pool filled with corpses. Clearly, they weren't the first group to be lured here as prey. Sammy's screams quickly drew the attention of Joey and the others, who followed the sound to find her. But unexpectedly,
vampire on my ass!
Peter, terrified by the sight, bolted in a mad dash to escape. However, after only a few steps, he was knocked downstairs by Frank's sudden opening of a door. Fortunately, the fall wasn't fatal since the floor wasn't very high. Seeing that she had lost her prey, Abigail turned her attention to Frank and gracefully moved towards him. Already injured in the leg, Frank was so scared that he rolled down the stairs. Abigail slowly approached Frank, ready to make an example out of him. Seeing this, Sammy, who had just escaped, hesitated for only a moment before charging forward. Unexpectedly, Abigail took a big bite out of her. After shaking off Sammy, Abigail grabbed Frank by the leg, ready to fly off with him. At the crucial moment, Peter regained his strength and pinned Abigail to the ground. Joey quickly pulled out the sedative and injected it into Abigail. Soon, Abigail passed out. When Abigail woke up, she found herself locked in a cage. Perhaps knowing that her captives had no chance of escaping, Abigail no longer hid the truth. She admitted that it was she who had arranged for Lambert to deceive everyone. The so-called kidnapping was just a game she had orchestrated. And of course, the selection of these people wasn't random. Each one of them had some conflict or issue with her father Christoph's company. Abigail explained that her father always considered her birth a mistake. In order to gain his approval, she decided to get rid of all the enemies that were connected to Christoph. For example, Peter used to be a security guard at Christoph's company, but he turned against them and took what he shouldn't have. Frank is a detective who once investigated the secrets of Christoph's company. Sammy caused financial loss to Christoph's company by manipulating the funds. Joey is a military doctor who, after retiring, accidentally killed someone due to a medical error. The person she killed happened to be Christoph's business partner, so Joey became Abigail's target. The bodies in the pool are the same. Upon hearing this, Joey felt a chill down her spine. She accused Abigail of treating murder like a game. Joey then asks Abigail if Abigail is doing this with her father's approval. Perhaps Christoph had lost interest in her from the very beginning. No matter how many people Abigail kills, she will never get her father's love. Despite Joey's words, Abigail calmly stated that none of them would escape, and sooner or later, they would all become her prey. Then, Abigail suddenly had an idea. She said she would let anyone who opened the cage leave alive. Peter was instantly tempted by this offer. He drew his weapon and pointed it at the others. After all, they were strangers without any deep connections. Frank tried to persuade him, saying it was obviously a trick and that Abigail wouldn't spare anyone, but Peter wouldn't listen. Just as Peter was about to touch the cage door, Joey shot him, hitting him in the abdomen. Having been a military doctor, Joey demanded Peter hand over his weapon if he wanted her to save him, or she would shoot again. This threat immediately subdued Peter. Joey instructed Frank to guard Abigail while she and Sammy treated Peter's wound. It was indeed a dramatic scene. Unexpectedly, as soon as they left, Abigail began to brainwash Frank. Fortunately, Frank was no ordinary person. Not only did he ignore her, but he also mocked Abigail as an unloved freak. These words instantly enraged Abigail. Suddenly, the cage door was smashed open by Abigail. It turned out the iron cage couldn't hold her at all. It was just a means for Abigail to toy with them. No matter what, Frank's words had indeed provoked Abigail. Just as Abigail was about to kill Frank, Joey smashed through the boarded-up window with a hammer. In a split second, the hot sunlight burned off the vampire's arm. Seizing the moment, everyone hurriedly ran into the study, the sunlight shining in provided them with temporary refuge. Seeing Joey and the others stepping into the sunlight, Sammy suddenly stopped. Having been bitten on the arm by a vampire earlier, she wasn't sure if she had been turned into one. Fortunately, when Sammy's fingers touched the sunlight without any reaction, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Although they were safe for the moment, the vampire would not give up once night fell. Figuring out how to escape became a pressing issue. At this point, Sammy proposed a plan. The devices sealing the house must be controlled by electrical circuits. If they could find the power source and create a short circuit, they might have a chance. With no better options, the group decided to try Sammy's suggestion. For safety, they split into two groups to search for the power source. Joey paired with Frank. Sammy teamed up with Peter. Unexpectedly, at that moment, a low voice suddenly echoed in Sammy's ears. Then, she saw the bite mark on her arm disappear. In the next instant, Sammy's entire consciousness was taken over. Walking ahead, Peter turned around to see Sammy had vanished. Just as he called out, a sharp set of fangs lunged at him. When Joey and Frank, alerted by the noise, arrived, they saw that Sammy, now a puppet, had killed Peter by biting him to death. As Joey and Frank watched in shock, Sammy elegantly stood up and slowly turned, revealing her fangs. Seeing this, Joey turned and ran, with Frank hurriedly following on his crippled right leg. They raced back into the study. Thankfully, the sunlight kept the controlled Sammy at bay for the moment. However, using Sammy's body, Abigail taunted them, saying that once the sunlight vanished, so would their lives. These mocking words instantly enraged Joey. She grabbed a silver tray and raised it above her head, using the reflection to kill the puppet Sammy. As they were discussing their next move, the bookshelf beside them inexplicably opened on its own. After a brief exchange, they decided to investigate. When they entered, there was a long corridor, and they followed it to the innermost room. Upon opening the door, they saw Lambert sitting opposite them. Frank, angry at having been deceived, moved forward to punch Lambert. However, when Lambert turned around, Frank was startled. It turned out Lambert was also a vampire. Lambert grabbed Joey by the throat and then informed Frank that he had no choice. 2 years ago, after Abigail turned Lambert into a vampire, she had been using his family to coerce him into finding Christoph's enemies for this hunting game. Lambert had long been fed up with it all. so he proposed a deal to Frank. He offered to turn Frank into a vampire, but he needed Frank's help to kill Abigail and Christoph, and then take everything from them. Frank said he didn't want to become anyone's puppet. Lambert explained that he would make Frank an independent vampire like himself, not subject to anyone's control. Frank hesitated for only 2.5 seconds before agreeing. Lambert then threw Joey to the ground and bit into Frank's neck. Next, Lambert fed Frank his blood. As Joey watched in horror, blood spouted from Frank's mouth like a fountain. Taking advantage of the moment, Lambert planned to deal with Joey. Unexpectedly, Frank suddenly stood up and he killed Lambert straight away. Transformed into a vampire, Frank seemed like a different person, appearing not to spare Joey either. Sensing danger, Joey quickly picked up a weapon to defend herself. Just then, Abigail arrived, and they instantly started fighting each other. Seeing an opportunity, Joey used the control device to unlock the barriers, then hurriedly ran outside. But as soon as she got outside, Frank caught up and grabbed her by the neck, lifting her into the air, perhaps because he was delirious. Frank actually said something like that. Wow.
Then, we're gonna go see that kid of yours, and I'm gonna make you kill him.
Who would have thought the plot could take such a turn? Of course, Abigail wasn't trying to save Joey out of kindness. She simply couldn't defeat Frank on her own. She hoped Joey would help her get rid of Frank. Then she'll keep her promise and let Joey go. Under normal circumstances, Joey would never have agreed, but Frank had mentioned her son earlier, which directly hit Joey's weak spot. So, she teamed up with Abigail. They coordinated with each other and quickly engaged in a fierce battle with Frank. Unexpectedly, the transformed Frank was incredibly powerful. He pinned Joey against the bookshelf with ease. Then he overpowered Abigail and started draining her blood. In her dying moments, Abigail extended her pinky finger, as if indicating that her earlier promise was genuine. As Abigail collapsed, Frank sank his fangs into Joey's neck. He intended to turn Joey into his puppet. When Joey awoke, Frank commanded her to kill Abigail. Joey stared blankly at Abigail like a puppet, but before Frank could rejoice, Joey suddenly struck back at him. It turned out Joey hadn't been turned into a vampire puppet. Abigail seized the opportunity to join the fight. Working together, Abigail and Joey soon subdued Frank. Abigail told Frank to learn the proper way to make puppets in his next life. Then she drove a stake through him. Blood splattered everywhere, making the scene incredibly gruesome. Abigail kept her promise and let Joey leave. But as Joey reached the door, Christoph suddenly appeared. Christoph, a true vampire progenitor, had no intention of letting Joey leave alive. However, Abigail stood firmly in front of her father, showing an unprecedented resolve. Christoph was surprised that the daughter he had always looked down upon had undergone such a significant change. After a moment of contemplation, Christoph took Joey's hand, sniffed it, and then told her to leave quickly. Whether he smelled a fellow vampire or his daughter's determination changed his mind. He let Joey go. As Joey walked away, the story came to an end. The movie's concept is quite intriguing, blending ballet with vampires in a refreshing way. Although the latter part of the plot is somewhat cliched, the overall gory scenes will definitely thrill fans of this genre. Follow me for more exciting content.